The hero, this being the immature version of the warrior archetype. There is much confusion about the archetype of the hero. He is generally assumed It is generally assumed that the heroic approach to life or to a task is the noblest, but this is only partly true. The hero, is in fact the only an advanced form of boy psychology, the most advanced form, the peak, actually, of the masculine energies of the boy, the archetype that characterizes the best in the adolescent stage of development. Yet it is immature. What the hero does is mobilize the boy's delicate ego structures to enable him to break with the mother at the end of boyhood, and face the difficult tasks that life is beginning to assign him. The hero energies call upon the boy's masculine reserve, which will be refined as he matures, in order to establish his independence and his competence. The hero enables him to establish a beachhead against the overwhelming power of the unconscious. The hero throws the boy up against the limits, against seemingly intractable. It encourages him to dream the impossible dream, that the impossible dream might just be possible after all, if he has enough courage. It empowers him to fight the unbeatable foe that, if he is not possessed by the hero, he just might be able to defeat it. What is the end of the hero? Almost universally, in legend and myth, he dies. He is transformed into a god, and translated into heaven. We recall the story of Jesus' resurrection and ascension, or of Oedipus' final disappearance in a flash of light at Colonus, or Elijah's ascent into the sky in a fiery chariot. The death of the hero is the death of boyhood, of boy psychology, and it is the death of manhood and man psychology. It is the birth of manhood and man psychology. The death of the hero in the life of a boy really means that he has finally encountered his limitations. He has met the enemy, and the enemy is himself. He has met his own dark side, his very unheroic dark side. He has fought the dragon and been burned by it. He has fought the revolution and the dark dregs of his own inhumanity. He has overcome his mother and realized his incapacity to love the princess. The death of the hero signals a boy's or man's encounter with his true humility. It is the end of his heroic consciousness. In my own life, I have done a lot of work and worked a lot on my humility. And I've come to the conclusion that believing we are invincible, although it sounds absurd, or believing we are the best or the greatest or magnificent, when we have grandiose thoughts of ourselves, that is a clear sign of our immaturity. It is when we begin to label our limitations that we realize our true power, because we are able to leverage those limitations, and our sense of self becomes more realistic, becomes something that we can work with in life. True humility, we believe, consists of two things. The first is knowing our limitations, and second is getting the help we need. Bit low. Okay. The grandstand bully. this being the active pole of the hero's shadow. The boy, under the power of the bully, intends to impress others. His strategies are designed to proclaim his superiority and his right to dominate those around him. He claims center stage as his birthright. If ever his claims to special status are challenged, watch the ensuing rageful displays. He will assault those who question what they smell as his inflation with a vicious verbal and often physical abuse. These attacks against others are aimed at staving off recognition of his underlying cowardice and his deep insecurity. The man still under influence of this negative aspect of the hero is not a team player. He's a loner. He's a hotshot junior executive, salesman, revolutionary, stock market manipulator. He's the soldier who takes unnecessary risks in combat and, if he's in a position of leadership, requires the same of his men. The book goes on to using Top Gun as the prime example, as it's kind of a douchey movie now, isn't it? But that's mainly because of Tom Cruise, of course. And he talks about how young Tom Cruise, takes dangerous risks and isn't has the characteristics of what we've just gone through. And he talks about it, and he comes to this part here, and expands by saying, the movie is really a story about a boy becoming a man. Interestingly enough, it is only after the Cruise character accidentally contributes to the death of his navigator friend in a tight aerial maneuver and suffers the grief of that, and only after he loses competition for Top Gun to a more mature Iceman, that he begins to move from adolescence to manhood. The man who is possessed by the grandstander bully pole of the hero shadow has an inflated sense of his own importance and his own abilities. Just reading this makes me think of, if we think of young men and their preoccupations. And one thing that comes to mind is the video game industry, in particular the first-person shooter industry. And of course we have to think about Call of Duty and similar games. Now, what is the prime motivation for this genre of video games? It is the dominance and destruction of other men, young men, in competition and proving that you are the best. Even if it means, you have to put up with and dish out verbal abuse. You even hear cases of racial or sexual abuse, language, death threats on the online gaming. And I think that a lot of it has to do with this shadow, or even this shadow here, this immature part of ourselves. When we go in the future and we have a look at the warrior and the values that the warrior has, it's completely different to what we see in a lot of young men. I think the video game industry really serves this thing. That's why a lot of these games just release game after game after game, year after year, even though it's very much similar to each other, because they serve these immature shadow needs that exist in a lot of young men today. The coward, the passive shadow of the hero. The boy possessed by the coward, the other pole of the hero's bipolar shadow, shows an extreme reluctance to stand up for himself in physical confrontations. He will usually run away from a fight, perhaps excusing himself by claiming that it is more manly to walk away. Isn't that interesting? It is more manly to walk away, or it is more manly to overcome and destroy your opponents. but he will feel wretched in spite of his excuses. It is not only physical fights he will avoid, however. He will tend to allow himself to be bullied emotionally and intellectually as well. When someone else is demanding or forceful with him, the boy, under the power of the coward, will cave in. He will easily acquiesce to pressure from others. He will feel invaded and run over like a doormat. Whew. So, where in your life do you try to dominate and destroy other men? Or where do you just fold and let them run over you? And how can you turn that energy and turn it into the youthful exuberance of the hero? Because we need the hero's energy to take us to the next level. But if we continuously get stuck in the mindset of competition, even if we win or lose, if we have the mindset of endlessly proving ourselves the better man, then really no one really wins. There's no end to that.